Hello good people of YouTube and welcome to my channel. In this video I wanted to take a look at some Medieval Knights from Victrix. Now as you can see I've already opened the packet, and that wasn't because I was bursting with excitement, it was because the plastic bag that they came in had a close encounter with a box cutter before I bought it, so it was actually quite tatty. Anyway, I've opened it, I've had a look at the sprues or plastic frames, and I've built some models. So I now wanted to talk through basically what you get and show you some examples. I have to say that these are some of my favourite Medieval Knights. The position of the horses, the pose that you find the riders in, the parts that you can use to create your own miniatures are absolutely awesome. And as you can see from here, it provides enough components to create 18 highly detailed cavalry figures. That's more than you would get in most other boxes from most other manufacturers. You tend to get 12 cavalry figures, but having said that, this was a little bit more pricey. It was £40 rather than the average sort of £22 to £25 that you might pay for Perry Miniatures or Fireforge, where you get 12 cavalry figures in a box. Anyway, this is the card label, for want of a better word, that you get with the plastic bag, and on it there are the standard instructions that you get from Victrix. The parts are labelled on the sprues. You get some photographed examples, and everything is sort of letter and number coded, and it tells you which body fits which heads and which arms fit which bodies and so on and so forth. However, having said that, any rider will fit any of the horses, and any saddle, and the saddles come separately, will fit any of the horses. So basically I've saved a sprue of each, a plastic frame of horses and a plastic frame of riders to show you, and then I've got some assembled examples to kind of finish off the video with. So having said that, I shall now have a quick look at the rider sprue first, because I want to spend a bit more time on the horses than the riders. This is just a standard frame really that comes with everything that you'd expect from multi-part plastic models. If we go back to the top, you've got some arms, you've got some head selections. These head choices here, H1, 2, 3 and 4, they fit, I think it's body 1, and there is a difference between those heads there and the rest of the heads here, which fit all the other riders, and that is because one rider torso does not have a neck on it, and that would be body 1 there. All the other rider torsos have necks with chainmail on, so those heads fit body 1, the rest of the heads fit all the other bodies, and there are some lovely poses there. I particularly like that one. That one caught my eye there, with the fabric around the legs there. I think that is that's pretty cool. The rest is pretty standard. All the arms have chainmail on them. Some have little attachments for shields. There are a variety of weapons, including axes and swords, and I think, yeah, there's a mace there as well. And then of course you've got spears. There are several different shaped shields, which have got wood texture on one side, and then they're plain on the other side, so they'll obviously take a water slide transfer or a decal if that's what you wish to do. So that is the rider frame, and there are 3 of those in a pack, and that gives you 18 bodies in total and a lot of head options. And just to give you an idea, I built 6 riders and I ended up with a plastic bag full of bits. So that's just a third of the bits that you will have left over when you've built all 18 cavalry riders. So that's pretty cool. It's always nice when you get extra stuff that you can convert with, and these will have some uses, as I'll show you in a second. Moving on to the horses. Now this is the horse sprue or horse frame, and on this there are some absolutely awesome sculpts. That there is my favourite horse, possibly my favourite horse of all time. I just love that pose, and I can show you that built in a second. But we've got some differences. We've got some variation in the fabric design. Some horses have tails out, some have patterns cut in the reins there, and they sort of suggest perhaps a more noble knight. So there's lots you can do with these, and these other bits that you can see here, SF3, that'll be a saddle front 3, and then there's an SB3, which is a saddle back 3. I did notice that there were several different designs. Some are plain, and some have sort of other patterns on them. Although here, on this side of the sprue, there's an SF1 and an SB1 there, which are patterned. And then there's an SB1 there, which is a plain, and SF1, which is plain. So when you glue the two saddle halves together, the front and the back, you just need to be careful that you don't get them mixed up. And make sure that the front of the saddle carries the same pattern as the back of the saddle. But that was it really. That was the only kind of problem I encountered. As I said, some horses have their tails showing, other horses are completely enclosed in the cloth. So that's the frame there. The horse bodies aren't interchangeable in the way that Perry horses might be, or some of the other horses, perhaps like the ones I've shown in previous videos from War Games Atlantic. These really do have a matching, left half to right half. So there's a horse 1 in 2 halves and a horse 2 and so on. If you really wanted to, there are a couple of bodies that you could convert. You'd have to do a bit of filling with green stuff. There are a couple of poses that you could swap the left and right sides if you really wanted to, but I don't think it's worth it, to be honest, because the poses that you get here look fantastic, and you've got 6 different horses. So you can make 18 in total. And yeah, it looks great. So that's the horse frame. The bag also contained some paper instructions. I'm just trying to angle it so there's no glare. So that tells you what your horse parts are. And then on the other side, which is useful, it tells you which body can be attached to which arm options and so on. Now, I did find that you could, certainly with the arms and the weapon hands, you could sort of tweak these and mess about and get some more variation. But the heads, as I said before, the body 1 has no neck on the body, so there are 4 heads, I think. Yeah, 4 heads that are made for that body. And unless you're going to get creative with a scalpel and some green stuff, that really is probably best left as they suggest you put it together. But anyway, instructions, an identity leaflet, those are the frames, and the card instructions that you get. And then what I've done here is I've taken another sprue of horses and built just the horse here, and this is the horse without the saddle. You have to make the saddle separately there, gluing the front half and the back half together, and then when you're ready you can then glue the saddle. And any of the saddle designs, this one's a plain one, but any of the saddle designs fit any of the horses. And as long as you trim off the attachments from the injection moulding from the sprue or the frame, as long as you make sure that's smooth and clean, they fit quite snugly in there. Of course, being someone who models with Warhammer miniatures and Warhammer 40k, the minute you get a geometric shape that fits another geometric shape, you start thinking, oh, I can magnetize those. So there was a second when I was building this that I actually thought, whoa, you could swap the riders. But actually there's not much point, especially if you're building an army full of knights that all have their own heraldry. And as I said before, you get so much variation in this pack that it's not really worth it. It might be different if you were doing a, Templar Knights army. You might have some fun there if you wanted, but it's just probably not worth the effort. But one of those things that when you do model with Warhammer, it's the first thing you think when you get options and choices. It's like, oh, yep, let's get the magnets around there. So anyway, that's the horse body built. That's the saddle, and as I said, you get 6 of those on a frame, and then this one I've just glued in place to show you. That's what you end up with. And then of course the rider body. This, as I said, was one of my favorites. I haven't quite cleaned it up properly, but I've just blue tacked mine to the horses at the moment because I will be painting them, and also probably haven't really decided which riders I want to go with which horses. But when I get there, I will obviously commit to gluing them down. Right, what I want to do now is show you these guys here, which are the riders have all been glued together, the horses have all been glued together, and then the riders have been blue tacked onto the horses, as I said. But this just gives you an idea of the dynamism of the poses. Now, what I've been trying to create here is an idea of some of the riders being sort of noble knights, and some of the riders being men-at-arms or bodyguards, that kind of retinue that look after and protect the noble knight that they work for. It's something that I picked up on while watching YouTube videos from Medieval Wargamer. He does some excellent videos, and he's into the 100 Years' War, and when he creates units of foot knights and mounted knights, he makes sure that for realism, that every noble knight is surrounded by henchmen, retinues, bodyguards. It really does create a realistic kind of feel to the unit. So that's what I was looking at doing here. There's also some other things that are worthy of note. And again, someone else on YouTube whose channel I watch quite a lot of is I'm not sure how to pronounce it off the top of my head. I think it's Scholia Gladiatora or something. It's I think his name is it Matt Easton, and he does some amazing videos on arms and armor and how different weapons would have been used. Again, I'll pop a link in the description for anyone who's interested. But based on some of his videos, and particularly when he was looking at shields that I think it was the Norman sort of teardrop shield that he was using as an example, but long shields that the Normans used to use that protect the shins of infantry, quite possibly get in the way of or they interfere with the rider controlling the horse when the Norman Knight is mounted. So he's got an excellent video where he looks at how those teardrop Norman shields would have been carried by a knight, a Norman knight in that case, whilst riding on horseback. And that's something I've picked up on because it seemed to make sense. If you've got a big long shield flapping around and slapping the side of a horse, it's going to interfere with the commands that you give the horse. And he also looked at the Bayeux tapestry where the illustrations of foot soldiers showed the Normans with their shields in the sort of vertical position with the narrow points at the bottom protecting the shins, the ankles. The shields were upright, but whenever a Norman knight was embroidered on the back of a horse, then the shield was being held horizontally, almost like this one I've got here. So that was just a little detail that I've chosen to kind of run with, because to me that makes sense, and I sort of, yeah, I like the look it gives. So I've used that here, where I've given a knight a small shield, then it's upright as you'd expect, but where the knight has a long shield, I've adjusted the angle based on Matt Easton's videos and the information that he was discussing, and I just think it just looks really cool and it works well, and I think there's a good argument to be had that is probably what the Normans, or what the early knights did with those long shields when they were riding on horseback. So that's why those are like that in those examples there. But anyway, this is almost a complete set, and I say almost because the last horse, I've used a different horse, but so this is the Victrix Medieval Knights that I've glued together to start building up an early 100 Years' War, or maybe even a late Crusader style army. Cavalry unit. The other thing that I've done as well is, again, after listening to Matt Easton's video, that Scholia Gladiatora, is I've swapped the head of that axe around. I know I've got an axe here in the sort of conventional position, but if you look at that axe there, there's no spike on the other side of it. So this chap is just a henchman or a squire or a bodyguard that I've got wielding an axe. But in the case of this rider here, who might be a baron or a noble knight, his axe actually has a point on it. And again, something that I've picked up on from listening to Matt's videos on YouTube is that it's more likely that the axe would have been held this way round if you're up against someone else who's armoured, particularly with a helm like we see here, because the flat blade of the axe may not necessarily do a great deal of damage if it's striking another piece of metal. But if you're aiming for the head of an opponent with a point like that, then all that force is going to be concentrated in a small point, and that will drive itself through the helm. So again, it's just me picking up on research that other people have done and thinking, yeah, that's a nice idea. I think that would be cool, and let's have a go at modelling it. So that's what I've done there. Now, as I said, this was almost a complete unit, because what I've done with this final knight from the Victrix Medieval Knights set here is two things. One, I've put it on a War Games Atlantic horse without any of the cloth armour or barding or whatever you want to call it. I know it has a particular name that I can't remember off the top of my head, but this horse has no sort of cloth covering, and as I said, this is a War Games Atlantic horse, and I just wanted to include that on the end of this unit to show scale. Now this is actually from their horses box. and not their light horses box. The light horses are slightly smaller, and I'll show you one of those in a second. But before I do, the other thing I wanted to just show you was the head on this knight at the end is actually from the Fireforge box that I featured in another video. Their Dusvolt range Western Armies Sergeant at Arms. That's actually a Sergeant at Arms head from the Fireforge box, and I can just show you that box again. So I did a previous video where I looked at this box and what you got inside and what my plans were for modeling that. So yeah, the parts are certainly interchangeable between Victrix and Fireforge, and that was what I just, as I said, changed the head on that one. And I thought that worked quite nicely. So there's the potential there for a bit more variety. So the next thing I want to show you is a couple of knights or sergeant at arms that I've actually built up from the Fireforge box there, that one there. This horse is from that box, this rider is from that box, this horse here is also from that box, along with the rider's body as well. But the spear arm on that model there, and both arms and the helmet on this model here are from the Victrix Medieval Knights pack. So the same pack that these knights are from here. So these are two Fireforge sergeants at arms with Victrix arms, weapons, and the helmet as well on that one. And I think they work really well. I think, if you're looking at doing some conversions, or you want to sort of mess about with the poses or change the weapons, or, as I said when I reviewed that box, I didn't feel that you'd got enough arm choices in that box anyway. So it's brilliant that that the models work with the Victrix arms, because you get loads of spare arms and heads as well with the Victrix Medieval Knights. So this is one that I've built using a combination of bits from both, but the horses and the bodies are from the Sergeant at Arms. And I did that so that I could show you how they kind of look together, and I think they work really well. So if you want to mix and match your knights, your cavalry, between those two manufacturers, between Victrix and Fireforge, I think you could end up with quite a good looking unit, and increase the variety again that you have with that. So that's what these built examples were all about, was just kind of showing you the potential from both packs, because obviously at £40 for 18 models, the Victrix pack is slightly more expensive than the Sergeant at Arms that you get from Fireforge. What was that? Well, that was £23 I paid for that, and you get 12 cavalry models in there. So having said all that, this is a Sergeant at Arms from the Fireforge box of Western Armies. But again, I've put this one on a War Games Atlantic horse, just to show you, the kind of the modelling potential there if you're looking to do something a bit different. Now, obviously, the saddles on these have these sort of fronts and backs, as I've shown you before. Here we are with this one. And you don't get those saddles on the War Games Atlantic horses, but it wouldn't take much to build up a front and a back around that rider. You can see the blue tack there. Obviously, I'd glue him on once I've committed to a particular conversion or design, but it wouldn't take much to green stuff the front and the back of the saddle on there and get yourself a medieval rider sitting in a medieval saddle. But that is the Wargames Atlantic. That's the light horse, that one, which is slightly smaller. I mean, if we sort of, I don't know how well I can show you, but it's a slightly smaller horse. And again, you know, I don't mind that so much if you're, you know, you've got units of light cavalry, units of heavy cavalry. The heavy cavalry want to be on larger war horses. If you've got a mixed unit of knights and barons and squires and stuff, then again, having them on a smaller horse probably isn't a bad thing. But then if we look at this horse here, that's slightly bigger, and that is the horses from Wargames Atlantic. So the light horse is just marginally smaller than the normal horse. So there is a slight difference between those two products if you're thinking of going out and getting them to do some sort of converting and kit bashing. So that's what I wanted to show you really with the Victrix Medieval Knights pack. I'll just show you that label again. And as I said, I saw some pictures of that on the internet and just thought, yeah, they're brilliant. Love the poses, love the movement in the horses. And of course you can paint them up as sort of Crusader knights. You can paint them up as Teutonic or feudal knights. And there's just loads of mileage there in that. So I've added these to my collection, and I will be including them into the armies that I'm building for early 100 Years War or sort of late Crusades. So almost finished, but before I do wrap this up, I just wanted to show you a Victrix horse compared to a Perry's miniature. Now this is a Perry's Agincourt mounted knight, but again, you get lots of parts in the Perry's box, so that you can make noble knights, you can make men at arms that are mounted, you can make squires. I mean, there's a lot you can do with the Agincourt mounted knights, and I will be talking about those in another video. But I just wanted to bring that one alongside here so that you can see scale wise against a Victrix knight that the Perry figures actually work quite well. I think scale wise there, I mean, obviously there's a difference in when these appeared in the sort of historical record. I mean, this is early 100 Years War, this is late 100 Years War. This horse is also used on their War of the Roses ranges, which is even later still. But if you're looking at blending models from different manufacturers and different eras to maybe reflect the kind of cannibalizing of armor from the dead or the wounded on the battlefield, where people who couldn't afford expensive armor would pick up bits and pieces on campaign, then there's heaps of opportunity and heaps of mileage. So I did want to show that, and again I can compare it with the sizes were so well matched. I was actually struggling to find the Fireforge models there, but again I think they all work pretty nicely. And you know, I know particularly from some of the fantasy stuff, you can often have have difficulty finding miniatures that match. And okay, these are all plastics, they're not metals, and some metals are smaller and than the plastics and so on. But in terms of Fireforge and the sort of Dusvault Western Armies, in terms of the Perrys and in terms of Victrix, I think these all go together quite well, and it does present an opportunity where you can create an army where perhaps the foot knights, some of the foot knights, the men at arms certainly, and some of the sort of armored peasants and archers and what have you might work across a broader time span, if you like, than the actual mounted knights, because it was the armour and the horse cladding that changed the most. So there we have it. So that is a Perry knight from Agincourt. And the last thing I wanted to show you, which comes back to the Victrix Medieval Knights, is this. And again, this is a figure that I've kitbashed and converted for Agincourt. And it's, I don't know how well you can see, I've sort of cut a sword and sort of glued it behind the gauntlet as though it's just being pressed. He's got a spear which is going to become a standard or a banner, and his visor's up there. So this is a Agincourt knight from the Perry range that's been slightly converted to fit a Victrix Medieval Knights horse from the packet I've been talking about, the set I've been talking about tonight. And the reason I've done that was because I wanted to recreate this chap here, who features on the cover of Osprey's Men at Arms, the Armies of Agincourt. Now, I can't actually remember his name, so I'm going to have to open the book up with one hand. There we go. So this is the guy here, Sir John Codrington, standard bearer to Henry V. So you can see there the kind of fabric on the horse, and there is some metal barding around the horse's head and neck, which I can green stuff, and that will be part of another video. But this was just to show you the sort of compatibility between the Victrix stuff and the Perry stuff and the Fireforge models. I hope you've enjoyed the video. It did go on a little bit longer than I had hoped, but obviously there was quite a lot to cover. I hope you found it useful. If you have, and you did enjoy the video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, where I will be looking at a range of plastic models from a range of different periods, and how you can kit bash them and turn them into more unique models. As I said earlier, I'll also look at anything that comes through from sort of historical documentaries or research, where perhaps the way that, you know, armies, soldiers are modelled and represented, maybe that changes a bit, who knows. But these are the things that I kind of enjoy doing. If I'm not doing fantasy and I'm doing historical stuff, I do like to look at some of the more unusual aspects of that. So thanks very much for sticking with me this long. As I said before, if you like the video, please smash that like button. Please hit subscribe. Any comments or questions, please leave them below. Take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.